Okay, here we go. All right, fun stuff from Lenine. And so welcome again to Multidisciplinary Spiritual Christianity. I'm your host. Hi there, I'm your host, Mark Rego-Monteiro, again coming to you from Iguape, near Fortaleza, Brazil, as an expat from New York City, born in Boston. Visited San Francisco, St. Louis, and so on. So welcome wherever you're from. And so the ongoing project here is the Fluviads, in the spirit of honoring Jesus' legacy of loving integrity and the need to take action, because Jesus only potentialized our salvation in general, and it is our personal effort and spiritual practice that gives us the ability to overcome the considerable forces of that have been abusing the power and privilege of Jesus' legacy. So let's get to the Fluviads here. Thanks, good to see you. Thanks for coming. So in the last episode, we talked about variola, smallpox, and some of that material. And so that brings us to Alexandre von Humboldt and Humboldt and Bonpland. So Alexandre von Humboldt was grew up and got some good education including the Freiburg School of Mines. And so by 1799, he arrived in Paris, where his brother and his brother's wife were living, and were able to get him in contact with a scientific sailing expedition that was getting ready to leave in revolutionary France there, with Napoleon leading armies still down in Egypt. But the trip was canceled. All the many activities, they were overextending themselves. So, but in the process, Humboldt nevertheless met this gentleman, Humboldt and Bonpland, from France, a French naturalist and physician. So they got along well, and they decided to try their luck down in Marseille. No luck there, and so they went over to a whole new level and visited Madrid. So that there they were able to meet actually a bunch of naturalists like H. Ruiz Lopez, because of at least two expeditions, including the one led by this guy here, Malespina, Alessandro Malespina, in the 1780s, I think it was. And so as Humboldt and Bonpland then got permission and then were sailing to Spanish Latin America, the colonies at the time, a typhoid outbreak on the ship forced them to change their itinerary from Cuba to Venezuela directly. And so they went to, that's how they arrived at the Rio Orinoco. And so they had some interesting discoveries there, right? This is Alexandre von Humboldt, by the way, and this is Humboldt and Bonpland, them as well. More generally, a sort of a landscape shot there. or painting rather, to be more correct. And just a reminder for any of you that may not have seen before, this is José Bonifácio Andrade Silva, who represents Alexandre Rodrigues Ferreira, as another naturalist at the time who had a painting made of him. So on the Rio Orinoco then, Humboldt and Bonpland had some interesting experiences, making some interesting discoveries. The guacharo or guacharo oil bird is a nocturnal echolocating bird. It flies like a bat. It was very interesting. This very interesting situation. And the Warao Asphalt Lake. Guanaco. So the name of the lake is Lake Guanaco. Warao is the tribe that lived in the area. So it's the Warao Asphalt Lake Guanaco that they either identified for the first time informally for European culture. Now, as their voyages continued, they discovered also the Cascade Canal, which links the Amazon and the Orinoco, a very interesting feature I never knew about myself. They also encountered the Maipure people, and as that experience was continuing, they discovered that there were electric eels in the river, and so the local people, perhaps indigenous, gave them advice when they asked, how can we catch some? And they suggested, well, run a mass of horses into the water and see what comes out. That's right. So they did it, and they got shocked themselves. Nevertheless, in an interesting experience there. So in the broader picture of voyages of the various locations that they visited, Humboldt and Bonpland also encountered José Celestino Mutis, a famous designer, a drawer, illustrator of naturalist themes. And they also climbed let's see, how would you say this in Portuguese? Monte Pichincha. Pichincha, Mount Pichincha, in the Ecuadorian Andes later on, at 19,300 feet and 5,900 kilometers. Now, there was another guy they met. I don't think it was him. Andre Bello, I think, was a tutor of Simón Bolívar, and they also encountered him. And Humboldt later met Simón Bolívar in Paris later on. So that's an interesting encounter. So I think that pretty much wraps up this whole series of images and gives you a summary of von Humboldt's accomplishments. So he's not taught much, right? Von Humboldt is much less known in American culture than Darwin, who came up with the theory. But wonderful to introduce so that we can also remember other cultural figures like Alexandre Rodrigues Ferreira, and begin to make more, have a richer knowledge of our scientific history and cultural history, and the various ideas that can help us with. So that, we'll leave it at that for today, and we'll be getting more into this image and the people here as Fluviadas as we continue this new project of mine, getting into history so we can learn from history with all the knowledge that we have and realize, oh yeah, it happens to be in Jesus's legacy. It's not just random, and that Jesus means that there is an integrity involved, and it's a loving integrity relating to God and God's love, the transcendent creator that has a role to play as we deal with a world that is unsustainable, scientifically measured and interpreted, and with the business system that is dominating and the influence and propaganda that the profiteering model of business has been perpetrating, and the injustice, social injustice that also includes, and the ecological and sustainability, and the human rights violations that all go with that. So, loving knowledge and loving a sustainable future, and how we can participate in that in a spiritual process that includes not just Jesus, but also Buddha, Gandhi, and many a pluralistic spirit that is appropriate to God's love, the love of a loving creator, a parental creator that Jesus taught. So thanks, be good, stay spiritual, and keep thinking about any steps that you can take to help us reach sustainability. In the meantime, here's Lenine. This is Multidisciplinary Spiritual Christianity. I'm your host, Mark Collenberg-Montero. See ya.
Fica faltando uma saia quando